Hey, it's Drybear. Dragonflight is almost upon us, and I've made 2 class guides already going over which class to pick and how the classes have changed going into Dragonflight. So if you're having trouble picking which class is going to be your main, you'll find links to those down in the description. But today, we're going to go into a starter guide for the class of Monk. I've been playing it ever since Mist. It's one of my favorite classes to play and one I will be playing in Dragonflight. So we're going to go over the basics of how the class works, starter builds and leveling builds for each of the 3 specs for whichever one that you want to play, and some general tips and tricks so you can jump start into the expansion ready to go as your monk. The monk has 3 different specs you can choose from. They have a tank spec called Brewmaster, a healing spec called Mistweaver, and a damage spec called Windwalker. All 3 of these specs primarily are melee. Mistweaver can play from range, although it seems like it's going to be the case in Dragonflight as it was with most expansions that fist weaving ends up being the winner. It's a little bit stronger than just sitting at range, though you can sit at range. They have a theme of very spiritual. They have chi-based abilities, and they have that kind of Pandarian aesthetic. Brewmaster will throw explosive barrels, breathe fire. Windwalker can summon elemental, storm, earth, and fire. They can summon celestials like Yulon, a jade serpent. They have an ox. They have tigers. So if you like the Mists of Pandaria thematic, you're going to love Monk. They're also on the more mobile side. They have rolls and chi torpedoes. They can spawn images and teleport back to them. They have tons of ways that they can use really unique abilities like Ring of Peace, knocking enemies away. And then they have some very unique playstyles as well. Brewmaster has the ability to stagger damage, which means they take the damage and then they slowly eat it over time. And then they can cleanse that. They have probably the most abilities they've had in any expansion yet with the new talent trees, allowing you to combine abilities that you couldn't before. And then Mistweaver can do some really cool manipulation with positioning, channeling abilities, instant casts, and they don't have crazy raid cooldowns, but they have lots of really fun combinations and positionals. And then Windwalker is probably the fastest it's ever been with the way it plays now. They have a lot of cool new options for combining abilities together. They have the Strike of the Windlord, which comes back from Legion. Super cool ability. And then, you know, like most classes, they're able to combine together abilities they couldn't before with the new expanded skill tree. So I'll put down in the description a import link for all of my starter questing leveling builds for each of the specs. All you have to do is go to import here and just Control-V, Control-C, Control-V this right in here. Name it if you want. It'll import the loading build here. This is at level 60. As you level, you will get 5 spec points and 5 class points that you can spend in the trees. So as you go through, I'll mention what you can spend your points on as you level up. But this you can import right away at level 60, have it ready to go, and we'll go over some basics that might help you get started. Let's start with some class talent ideas here that will be present in all 3 specs. If you don't know, in Dragonflight, the left tree is your class tree that all specs have access to, and the right tree is your spec tree, which are unique to the spec that you have. The things you'll see common in all specs here is going to be Touch of Death amplification here. You can make it stronger to deal more damage, and then you can reduce the cooldown on it. This is huge for leveling. This ability with the talents goes down to 1.5 minute cooldown, and it's essentially a warrior execute. When the target gets low, you can use the Touch of Death on them and clear them out. And even on Windwalker, you can do AoE Touch of Death, which is really cool. The other thing to look at is going to be your Vivacious Vivification. This is a really cool talent that they added to the tree. I hearken it to the Enhancement Shaman having instant healing surges. But every 10 seconds, your next Vivify becomes instant. We'll run this on all 3 specs for leveling. But you'll get this buff every 10 seconds. And when you cast Vivify, it is instant. This is awesome for leveling. It'll keep you high pace. Every 10 seconds, you'll get a new one. Boom, there it's already back. You can cast it again. And this keeps you healthy as you're leveling. And you'll get a lot of ways to modify Expel Harm as well. Expel Harm historically has been rather weak for Brewmaster and Windwalker especially. You don't use it because it uses up your energy too much. And then you'll get some ways to modify that in this expansion. I think if you run all 3, which we will for Windwalker, you'll get the crit chance increased, then you'll get the critical healing increased, and then you'll get the increase on healing overall based on missing HP, which will make Expel Harm while leveling pretty damn effective. The other thing you want to know about is going to be your white tiger statue. This is new in Dragonflight. We've always had the Jade Serpent for Mistweaver, and we've always had the Black Ox statue for tanking, but this one's super cool. When you spawn this statue here, it will start pulsing AoE around it, and I don't think it has a target limit either. You can even use it to pull and take damage for you. It has a decent amount of health on it, so you can use it for that. But for leveling, you're definitely going to want White Tiger Statue. It's a 2-minute cooldown. Pull a bunch of mobs together. You can sweeping kick them to stun them, and then just do a bunch of pulsing AoE damage. No matter what spec you're leveling, you're going to want to pick this up. And then you may want to put points as you level down into the Ox statue just to reduce the amount of damage that you're taking. And don't be afraid to use your movement abilities like Tiger's Lust if you haven't picked up in your class tree. And then Transcendence is super cool too. This is one of the most underutilized abilities in the Monk toolkit. The idea is that you can walk, put Transcendence up, it'll put an image of the monk where you stood. And then you have another ability called Transcendence Transfer, where when you activate it with a 45-second cooldown, you can teleport to that location. Not only is this incredibly strong for PvE and PvP, it's super cool for leveling as well. You can imagine if you have a quest, say you're like up on top of a cliff and the quest mobs are down below, you can put your Transcendence image at the top of the cliff, go down, do your business. This image will last 15 minutes, and you have to be in range to teleport to it. But if there's an inconvenient way to get back, you can jump down to the bottom, then teleport back up, finish your quest, and be on your way. So definitely take advantage of the monk mobility as you're going through your leveling. We're also going to be running improved roll, which gives you another charge of either Chi Torpedo or Celerity with your extra rolls there. So definitely make sure you're utilizing that for your leveling. Next, let's go into leveling builds for each of the three specs and some general knowledge on being able to level and utilize them properly. Starting with the far left, the Brewmaster, my favorite tank spec. This spec is super fun, and with the way things are set up right now, they do the most AoE damage or damage in general of any tank in Dragonflight starting out. Their damage is bonkers. They're actually probably the squishiest tank of the ones that are in the game starting out. We'll see what happens when we start getting fully geared, but they are quite squishy, but they do tons of AoE damage, partly because, again, with the Dragonflight effect of talent trees, they have access to more things at the same time than they ever have before. A lot of these skills on this spec tree used to be mutually exclusive, which means you couldn't have them at the same time. So for Brewmaster, I'll have this link down below. This is a leveling build just for Brewmaster. As you level up, you'll want to go down in the class tree to pick up your Black Ox statue, so you can use it to taunt enemies and take damage for you. And then as you get class points, spec points over here, I would recommend just coming down and getting Weapons of Order. And you can get either one of these. They're both pretty decent. But this just gives you, this is the Kyrian ability from Shadowlands, but you'll get that extra piece here. But you'll have most of what you need for the level 60 build here on the Brewmaster tree. And when it comes to general rotation, when you start doing dungeons or just pulling mobs together and cleansing them, the general idea, especially now that we have Storm Stout's last keg, is to use Keg Smash liberally. This ability owns, it is the basis for most of your damage, the basis for most of your effects. So you want to just throw out the Keg Smash. It will coat them in the brew. It does tons of AoE damage. And then when they are coated in the brew, if they currently have that Keg Smash, you can breathe fire, you can set them on fire, and you can do other things as well. We also got Exploding Keg back, which is really cool. This is an ability that allows you to do a ton of AoE damage. You can throw that down. You're going to have Spinning Crane Kick, which we will be getting in this build, Charged Passions, which means that if your Blackout Kick and Spinning Crane Kick land on a target that has Breath of Fire on them, then it'll do extra damage, which is super nice. So you start getting some really cool effects from that. And then on top of that, you want to be using your other abilities on cooldown. If you're running Rushing Jade Wind in this build, we will be. It's another AoE. You want to use that on cooldown, use that on cooldown, throw out your Ox on cooldown, which will do AoE stomps, throw out your statue, your White Tiger statue for AoE, throw out your Kick Smashes, Breathe Fire, you can stun people. You're going to get a lot of AoE, and honestly, leveling as a monk is probably going to be the easiest and most efficient as Brewmaster, though Windwalker has more mobility, so maybe you might get faster times with Windwalker. Brewmaster is going to be so absolutely nuts in the AoE damage department. So if you're looking for a starter build for questing, I have it linked down below. You'll just have to import the string. Boom, you're ready to go. You're off to start questing. Next up is Mistweaver, and I think more so in Dragonflight than most of the recent expansions, at least the last 3, it is viable to level as healing without feeling like you're being too ineffective. In most expansions, at least the last 3 of them, it has been better to run your damage off spec while leveling just because it's going to be faster, you're going to kill faster, you're going to move faster, it's going to be much easier. But I think with the class tree the way that it is, you get access to a lot of really cool things like Chi Wave, Chi Burst, White Tiger Statue. You're going to get a lot of good AoE out of that. There's even some extra damage in here for Mistweaver that's going to be nice. So just like Brewmaster, I have down below in the description a import string you can use to get my Mistweaver leveling and questing build. But let's go over some of the basics on how to play and what to look out for. Just like with Brewmaster, we're going to have the White Tiger Statue for AoE. And unlike Windwalker and Brewmaster, you can basically freely spam your Spinning Crane Kick. It just costs mana, but it's not that much mana. So you can just kind of do this AoE over and over and over. Use your leg sweep to stun and just keep going after it if you'd like. The other thing is you will be picking between Chi Burst and Chi Wave. Most people like running Chi Wave because it's fire and forget. You just launch it and it bounces back and forth. I think if you're positioning properly, you'll get more value out of Chi Burst, especially if you're doing big pulls. So I personally like running Chi Burst. You stack everything up and dump it on top of a big AoE. But they're both fine to pick. Just make sure you're picking one that works for you. Next, we'll be running with the Thunder Focus T, which is kind of the bread and butter for Mistweaver. All of these affect healing except for one, and that is the Rising Sun Kick. So if you activate your Thunder Focus T and Rising Sun Kick, the cooldown will be reduced. You want to be using this every time while you're leveling. There's some other effects you'll get from being on your Feline Stomp and having Chi G out, which are also useful, but pop this for Rising Sun Kick. The next thing is Teaching of the Monastery. This is the foundation for fist weaving. This makes it so when you hit a target with your Tiger Palm, you'll stack up Teaching of the Monastery, and then the next time you use your Blackout Kick, it'll hit multiple times. Super useful, great with Feline Stomp, etc., and Spirit of the Crane if you're running low on mana. Next is the Feline Stomp. This was the Night Fae ability from Shadowlands. Super useful. You stomp, you put an AoE down. There's actually some leeway here as you get towards the edge, but as long as you're standing on the stomp, your melee attacks, Blackout Kicks specifically, have an ability to reset the cooldown of Rising Sun Kick while you're in it, and then your abilities reset Feline Stomp more often while you're standing on it, which is cool. So if you want to be using these on top of it, you want to gather as many mobs as you can together, put down your statue. You can summon Chi-Ji if you'd like. Get that extra little bit there. He will react to the way you are attacking, doing things like that. You have tons of knockbacks, other things, throw out your Chi Burst, whatever. We did get a new ability in Dragonflight, which makes it even easier to level, and that is Zen Pulse. I think this existed many expansions ago, but it's back. This one is super cool. So this one, you will target an ally, in this case would be you, and when you activate it, it will deal damage to all targets around you, which is super cool. It will trigger a second time and pulse again. It's more ways to get AoE damage. Then we can pick up Echoing Reverberation, which means that if you have both your hots on you, your Renewing Mist and your Enveloping Mist, when you target yourself and use Zen Pulse, it will do an additional strike. So you get crazy amounts of AoE damage. Then you add Bone Dust Brew to the mix here. This ability is you mark targets, and then when you do damage, it'll duplicate that damage. So you can see now with Dragonflight, adding all of these things together, it's going to be pretty fun and straightforward to level as Mistweaver if you'd like to. And again, if you want this leveling build, you can pick up the string down below in the description. And lastly, we have Windwalker. I have been on and off Windwalker since Mists. I think this is probably one of the best iterations of Windwalker we've seen. It opens up a lot of options. It's not just going through the same 3 abilities over and over and managing your big cooldowns like Storm, Earth, and Fire or Serenity. So really cool. One of the benefits of Windwalker as a leveler too is that they have crazy mobility. Not only do you have the normal mobility that a monk would have with rolls, you can do your Transcendence if you pick it up, and you can have tons of ways to move around. You have Tiger's Lust as well for movement speed, so you're going to be zooming, clearing things out. You also have one of my favorite abilities, Flying Serpent Kick, which is really cool. So you'll be able to activate this, and then you'll be able to just zoom And if you cancel it, like activate it again before you end, it'll do a big AoE pulse. Super dope, lots of fun. As we mentioned in the general section, you're going to have other options for Touch of Death on Windwalker. The first is when you have a combo strike, Touch of Death gets reduced in cooldown. We're already running the reduced cooldown on Touch of Death, which makes it even shorter every time you combo strike, which is really nice. And then you also have an extra one, which is when you Touch of Death, you deal increased damage, and you can use it a second time within 5 seconds. Super cool. So you can activate Touch of Death and then activate it again. Excellent. If you get mobs down really low, you can start stacking them up, clear them all out with your tons of AoE, and then you can just execute them in AoE. Then as you level, I would recommend picking up Fatal Flying Guillotine and improving Crane Vortex. This one makes it so Touch of Death also strikes up to 4 additional targets. So you can do it multiple times in a row. You reset the cooldown slowly as you combo strike. It does additional damage, and it does AoE, and you can do it twice in a row, which is really cool. It makes it very easy to level with this. So I recommend picking these up as you level. We're also going to be picking up Whirling, Dragon Punch, Strike of the Windlord. You're going to have those cooldowns to rely on top of everything else. Of course, we'll want our Celestial. As you level towards 70, you probably want to pick up the Haste here from Invoker's Delight and push that down. And then as far as rotation goes, your core are your first 4 abilities, which is going to be your Tiger Palm, which when we run Skyreach, it allows us to dash to the target. Super useful for leveling. And then you have a Blackout Kick. And then you want to be using those 2 as filler on your downtime. But then you have a bunch of things that go on cooldown that you'll basically just want to dump to make things simple. You have your Zwen Tiger you can pop up, keep your Celestial up. You can run either Storm, Earth, or Fire, or Serenity. Some people like Serenity. It has 1 charge, but it's stronger. And then Storm, Earth, and Fire have 2 charges, but it has a little less impact, and it doesn't have the free chi consumers. I like Storm, Earth, and Fire because it has 2 charges. It allows me to use it on more pulls and manage how I use my cooldowns there. Then you're going to want to be upping Strike of the Windlord, throw out your Whirling Dragon Punch, which requires Rising Sun Kick, and your Fist of Fury to be on cooldown. Keep in mind, you still have your White Tiger statue, which you can dump on the ground for AoE. And then what I would do is stack up your Crane Vortex, Mark of the Crane, and then your Dance of Chi-Ji to get really high stacks on your Spinning Crane Kick. And then once you have high stacks on it, pop whatever cooldowns you have and spin away. So super easy, lots of fun. You have lots of mobility, lots of ways to move around, and you have more abilities than you've had. Plus, you can get Thunder Fist, which makes your Strike of the Windlord pulse AoE damage. It's so fun to level. For defense, you have Touch of Karma, Dampen Harm. You won't really make much use of Diffuse Magic for magic while leveling, but it can be useful. And then as you get class points, again, you'll want to go down to pick up your Black Ox statue. So that's the build. It'll be down below in the description for import if you'd like. But good luck leveling and happy expansion, everybody. If you enjoyed yourself today, leave a like down below. You can support me and my work on Patreon and view Patreon exclusive content, link in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.